Well, good morning to you. You're right on time for today's edition of Morning Express. I hope you got up well and you're ready to kickstart your day in style. My name is Jesse Rogers and I'll be here with you for the next 3 hours as we get to take a look at the latest news making headlines, what you can expect in today's edition of the dailies. With me, as usual, I have Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard, and the Daily Nation, which will be taking a look at some of the key stories that are shaping the day-to-day discussions in the country. A lot to do with politics and the state of the economy, even as that one-on-one interview with President Uhuru Kenyatta features prominently in today's dailies. What President said about his deputy, about the state of BBI and his succession going forward. We'll definitely get to highlight that in totality. But before we do that, let's take a look at what's happening internationally. We begin closer home with the latest in Uganda. The Daily Monitor covers extensively, so you can at least be up to speed with what's happening closer home, even as we take a look at the international news. So there you have it. On the page of Daily Monitor, as you can see on your screen just shortly, there you go. UPDF warns Ugandans against moving unescorted to South Sudan. That's one of the main issues covered on the Daily Monitor. Even a South Sudanese man, Lango family fight over sold baby. More details right there. 3 dead. 5 hospitalized after Mbale accident. More details on that particular unfortunate turn of events. Lokech transfers 272 police bosses on eve of his death, even as suspended Uganda Airlines bosses to face wax disciplinary committee. Whoever is found culpable will be processed further to face the law. The latest from Uganda right there. But let's cross over to Tanzania. The Citizen covering extensively one of the main stories, Zanzibar to build Africa's second tallest skyscraper and largest hotel in East and Central Africa. And they've secured massive investment in a commercial tower that will completely change the face of semi-autonomous Indian Ocean archipelago. Wow, it looks really good right there, at least according to the plan. We'll see how that develops. Other details, General Mabeyo's visit to Rwanda. More details on that particular official visit by the Chief of Defense Forces of the Tanzania People's Defense Forces. Kenyatta dares Ruto to quit government. Well, this particular story is making headlines across the border, where the president has called on the deputy to resign from government if he is dissatisfied with the government's agenda. Dar Archbishop orders vaccination of all clergymen, and he's directed that all priests should be vaccinated against COVID-19. Good news from Tanzania, even as they push for mass vaccination with the number of vaccines available in the country. Over to Rwanda today. What's happening there? Well, that same story, Zanzibar set to build Africa's second largest, tallest skyscraper. More details right there. But they ask a very critical question. Have you taken the COVID jab? It will soon become a must to access some offices. And if memory serves me correctly, Kenya was also set to take that move. A piece of legislation was set to be introduced in Parliament. So in case you can't get your COVID jab, make sure you do. Zambian opposition leaders take office. That's one of the main stories covered in today's daily, even as Samia is criticized for calling female football players flat-chested. And that is one of the issues that perhaps will be facing President Samia right now, where those comments were widely talked about online. And I'm sure she will be trending for a couple of days due to that sentiment that might irk a couple of individuals. Over to CNN World News. Let's take a look at what's highlighted here. Taliban says they won't allow Afghans out. That's one of the main stories right there, even as the militant group told Afghans not to go to Kabul airport and rejected U.S. evacuation extension. Well, the time is ticking for the United States. They're set to leave the country, and that might be an issue going forward, even as other issues arise from across the globe. Possible Havana syndrome incident delayed Kamala Harris' flight to Vietnam. More details of the latest from the international scene. As you can see right there, CNN has covered some of those news-making headlines extensively. And let's take a look at Kenya's bold newspaper, The Standard. We begin locally right now. Just taking a look at the front page, this is what you can expect. Uhuru, the problem with my deputy. And it's all to do with that interview where the president opened up on a raft of issues. And for the first time after the BBI judgment, the president speaks on the lost constitutional moment, why Deputy President Ruto should consider quitting the IEBC, and talk on postponement of next year's general election. So much details covered on page 6, 7 and 8 of the Standard. And we have what the president said on his deputy right there, quoted. It would be an honorable thing that if you're not happy with the government, step aside and take your agenda to the people. But the DP definitely did fire back, and it has been highlighted on today's dailies just below there. As the DP fires back, no retreat, no surrender. That's the response by the deputy president, who said, and he's quoted, I am a man on a mission. I have no space to retreat, neither do I have the luxury to surrender. We must make the poor to be part of our nation. And this is definitely him vying to stay put, adding he will not be cowed by threats from some state officials out to frustrate the bottom-up model. That's one of the main stories covered in today's dailies, even as the Daily Nation covers the same story extensively as well on pages 4 all the way to 7, highlighting that the gloves are now off in politics. And it's all to do with the great rift between President Uhuru Kenyatta on one side and his deputy William Ruto on the other. On resignation, the DP has vowed to stay put. On succession, the president is cobbling up a unity alliance to run up against his deputy. On 2022 polls, the head of state has ruled out postponement, but questions abound. Plus, a behind-the-scenes report on Uhuru's State House interview with the editors. Of course, causing so much political fodder in the country. We'll get to talk about some of the key issues highlighted there, but other stories covered on the Daily Nation. The moment of change of power in Zambia has been highlighted, where President Kenyatta was amongst other African heads of state who witnessed the swearing-in of Zambia's President Hakainde Hichilema in Lusaka. ODM Chief Raila Odinga was also in attendance of that quite historical feat in the African continent. And I mean, it's unfortunate that ever so often we don't see such transitions, peaceful transitions, where democracy carries the day. We'll definitely highlight some of the issues on that particular story. But I want to begin with the latest right here locally on that particular story that's covered on the front pages of today's dailies, where we start with the escalating war of words between President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy William Ruto, after the DP, in an apparent response to the president, said he would neither resign nor cower in his sustained criticism of the government. Ruto said he will only leave government on the last day of the Jubilee administration. The DP made the remarks just yesterday, a day after President Kenyatta challenged him to quit government if he's dissatisfied with it. Murimi Mwangi with that story.
For President Uhuru Kenyatta, reality of collapse of his legacy project, the Building Bridges initiative, has been slowly sinking. But to his deputy William Ruto, the past few days following the Friday Court of Appeal shootdown of the BBI have been a carnival of celebrations and thanksgiving of good riddance. And for the first time since the ruling, Kenyatta broke his silence.
I have an agenda that I was elected on, and that work must continue. And it would be really the honorable thing that if you are not happy with it, that you would actually, step aside and allow those who want to move on, move on.
Words taken rather unkindly by his deputy when he spoke in Taita Taveta at the funeral service of the late Mahor Ward MCA Ronald Hanel.
I want to tell them, I am a man on a mission. I have no space to retreat. And I don't have the luxury to surrender.
You know, you can't on the one hand say, I'm not going, and because at the same time, I don't agree. You know, you've got to decide, because you must be principled in that endeavor. Huh? That's what happens in a democracy, so that you don't confuse people.
Ruto has been a consistent critic of the Kenyatta and former Prime Minister Raila Odinga-led BBI process, recently rejected by the court on account of, among other grounds, failing to meet the threshold of a popular constitutional amendment initiative due to the consistent hand of the president and government throughout the process. Even on this, Kenyatta and Ruto cannot agree.
When they sit and they say that the IEBC is illegally constituted, the same IEBC that swore in the same court and the same judges. When they say IEBC was not properly constituted, the same IEBC that has conducted 27 by-elections, and we have not heard anybody say that there is a problem with those elections. You know, I have a lot of problems with it.
It cannot continue that those of us who are leaders want to change the constitution so that we can share positions, share power, without regard to the millions of young people who do not have jobs.
I was hearing some people say, this BBI is to propel Raila Odinga. Raila Odinga declared his presidency with or without BBI, and he's still on the ticket. BBI has nothing to do with his candidacy. BBI has nothing to do with Uhuru wanting to continue, because there is no clause in BBI that says that the incumbent president is going to continue for another 10 years.
This is the second time in just 3 months that President Kenyatta has dared his deputy and those critical of his policies to resign if they were tired or dissatisfied in his government, rather than perpetually criticizing it from within.
The reality is that this is a call we have made over and over again, and the president has been very patient, extremely patient. And it's a kind of patience that sometimes is taken for weakness.
If now you want the deputy president, you are saying him to go because you are the one who started this, resign, you and him, and give the mandate to the people. Let Wanjiko say what he wants. Simple as that, but don't put us in this confusion.
The president is coming to retire in 2022 in the next, 11 months. So it is up to the Kenyan society to say what is good for us, and we avoid individual interests.
Attorney General Kihara Kariuki has already indicated intent to appeal the BBI verdict at the Supreme Court alongside the BBI Secretariat, an appeal that will be closely watched as the Kenyatta succession politics intensify. Murumi Mwangi, KTN News.
Well, Murimi Mwangi sort of paints a picture of the latest developments around the ongoing tussle between the president and his deputy. But let's also highlight this story on the ongoing wrangles between the president, Uhuru Kenyatta, and his deputy, William Ruto, are not new if history is anything to go by. The second most powerful position in the land has always been jinxed, marred with failed friendships and backstabbing. So what does history say, and what are the options for the two most powerful figures in Kenya? KTN's Emmanuel Tor reports.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
The journey to replace the 4 former IEBC commissioners nearly inched to the end after the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee vetted the 4 nominees by the Special Select Committee of IEBC before they are finally confirmed or rejected by the National Assembly. Juliana Cherera from Mombasa County and a former sub-county executive officer in the county government of Mombasa was the first nominee on the hot seat.
Would you recommend, if you're appointed to the commission, that we continue with the electronic transmission? Is there an alternative?
Technology is the best, and it can give us that result very fast. Something else with technology is that not every area is enabled. So it becomes a problem because we have not already advanced to that level.
Well, apologies for that. That particular story is on the ongoing interview of IEBC nominees. The House team just yesterday is vetting 4 individuals nominated to fill commissioner positions at IEBC. We'll also get to talk about that, so just short apologies for that. But the main story of the day is centered on President Uhuru Kenyatta's interview, on which he spoke about a raft of issues covered extensively on pages 6, 7 and 8 of the Standard, as well as page 4 to 7 of the Daily Nation. And we'll begin on that particular note. I'm joined in studio by politicians, and I'm sure we'll get to politic about these developments. Martins Owino, Member of Parliament and Viwa constituency, it's great to have you with us, and good morning.
Good morning, Rogers.
Well, it's good to see you.
Nice to be here.
Well, pleasure is all ours. Also joined by Sakwa Bunyasi, Member of Parliament, Nambale constituency. Good morning, sir.
Morning, Jesse.
Well, it's great to have you.
Yes.
Okay, let's start on this particular issue, Martins. I know you have a lot to say because you've been calling for the same issue as President Kenyatta. If you're not happy with the government, the most honorable thing to do would be to resign and take your agenda to the people. But the DP has fired back, mentioning I'm a man on a mission, no space to retreat or surrender. I came here by choice and we will leave by choice. How do you react to this?
Well, I think it is clear to Kenyans to see what it is. And I really say kudos to President Uhuru Kenyatta. If you could compare the two tones, President Uhuru was very presidential and full of humility. You know, he says, and I can paraphrase, we are cooking here in the kitchen. You may not like the ingredients, you may not like the temperature, you may not even like the food being cooked. If that is the case, get out of the kitchen. Go form another kitchen and cook yours. And that is what Kenyans have been saying. And Rogers, it is very, very unfortunate to see the highest insubordination in the land. Then the next day, you know, D will never be equal to P. Never. When you are a deputy, you're a deputy. The presidency, this is what I like most of Uhuru. The presidency is the highest office, and they can do all sorts of things if they want. But President Uhuru has restrained himself to see democracy work. But his deputy, with all the arrogance, I don't know what he means, I am a man of a mission. I don't know, maybe his own mission. But for the Kenyans, even for the young people who are being mentored on what it is to be assistant to somebody, it's a menace. And I would say this. He may not have the luxury to resign now, but when the issues hit, or heads hit the brick wall, I think he will have to. Because what he's doing now is distracting the services his boss started, and they started together. I wish you could take a leaf from Jaramogi in 1966. He said, with all terms and humility, I cannot stay in the government to continue drawing coffers money from the coffer. I want to resign because in my own conscience, I'm not contributing anything. I don't have any job to do here. So I'm going to seek other mandates so that I can come up with a clear vision of what I have to do. Okay. And President Uhuru put it very, very, very presidential. If you are dissatisfied, step aside. And that is what the deputy should do. Just thumping in this issue will not help him at all.
But Martins, would you blame the deputy? This is an individual who's been sidelined in the very government that voted for him twice, 2013, 2017. We hear his men saying it's safer within than without, since some of his lieutenants have been hounded by government agencies when it comes to corruption cases. At least that's the narrative his men are pushing. So would you blame him?
But is this the right way to handle it? You know, in this world we suffer frustration. Even in your own house, your children can rebel about you. Is that the way to handle it? He should ask himself, and there's another philosopher who put it very correctly. If you tell a child to do something and you come and find out that he has not done it, don't blame the child. Blame yourself first. Review yourself. was I clear in my instructions? So it's upon the deputy to review himself. Why is he being sidelined? And you know, if you cannot have the ability to confront your boss, discuss, and have a dialogue, refocus, then that is where the arrogance comes in. You don't want to do anything about it. But as it is now, as the Constitution demands, is the principal assistant. So what you need to do is what he needed to do is to have had those dialogues, whether it is difficult or not, but you keep on doing what the vision was, and that is what the power is all about. The power is not about when things are good. No, when things are not good, how do you react? How do you act as a person, as a leader? What example do you give on how to go through problems? He has failed totally on that. Okay. And that is very unfortunate.
Okay, well noted. Sako Bunyasi, add your voice to this. I don't know if it's a dangerous precedence going forward, because when the president and the deputy are not in equal terms, at least before the 2010 constitution, we well know how it would go down. The deputy president or the vice president would definitely be on his way out. But this time round, they're joined at the hip. It's a joint ticket. So what say you? Because the president is mentioning that this is what happens in a democracy. You cannot ride on what we have done and talk a different language on the side.
Thanks much. Thank you very much, Rajesh. Clearly, there is a big difference between the pre-2010 and the post-2010. The pre-2010 vice president was simply a senior cabinet officer appointed by the president. And therefore, even the president was at liberty to drop him, even without notifying him. So there wasn't much ado about whether he was in or out, depending very much on the pleasure of the president. That was changed. Kenyans changed it very willfully, saying that the person who is running as deputy president would be one who is elected by the people. Mm-hmm. And so the two have a joint mission. And the president, in practice, has very little he can do to sort of just fire his deputy because he's unhappy with him, because he has a newfound partner. And if, you know, like in a marriage, you find a new person out there and you want to be able to push your wife to the kitchen and finally out of the gate simply because you got a new person. Now, those options are not there. And I think that the onus on this also rests on the president himself to ensure that that partnership works for the Kenyans, because that partnership is not theirs. And the reason I think why number two is being stubborn many times is that despite the inconvenience and the ugliness of what it might appear, they're not breaking the law. And I think that's, in a way, that's our salvation in Kenya, that these are unhappy times, mm-hmm. but largely acting within the law. Who suffers? The nation does. Because I think the legacy of the president, which will be looked at intensively with or without deep in there, but it's still his ticket, will be judged by the outcomes as they are. Of course, the issue is that the deputy has not been working with the president in implementing the agenda. You have heard the deputy say that it's the first time they implemented the agenda they had agreed as Jubilee, and you remember how the thing was very flamboyant, and even us in Parliament, there was a tyranny of numbers. Laws were passed that did not really care about what the minority said. They say minority may have a say, but majority will have their way. That arrogance that was there, but it got things done in accordance with their manifesto at that time. Then come the second term, I think they had difficulty in now defining which part they should have, given the arrangements that were in place. Now, sometimes people jump to blame the handshake, but I would say the handshake had a big role in this foul-up, mm-hmm. although the handshake itself had big advantages, particularly peace dividend. Excuse me. And the peace dividend indicated also that we had a weak state, one that could not keep law and order, in which citizens had felt that the election had not been fair, so the citizens were trying to come out. But the violence that was on the street was clearly a weakness of the state to not be unable to stamp it out. And therefore, they took a political option. Good for Kenyans, because we're now at peace, we can worry about other things. Mm-hmm. But we can't pretend that that handshake did not disrupt the arrangement that Jubilee had in place. Because no longer now, Jubilee, as you can see, Jubilee is various pieces for that and for other reasons. So Kenyans like to talk about this, but we like to dance around the issue. The issue is that the DP is not happy with the outside arrangements that the president has gotten into. Those arrangements have some benefit to Kenyans as well. It's not entirely offline, but these are the consequences. And I think these guys are like to serve to the end. And they must then own that legacy that they have got.
Exactly. Let's see how it goes. Fahali wawili wakipigana nyasi huumia. That's what they commonly say. Let's bring in Stephen Mwakesi joining us via way of Zoom. He's a public policy analyst, and it's great to have you with us, sir. Just add your voice to the ongoing fallout between the president and his deputy. I'm looking at the dailies today, and they mentioned that the BBI ruling has actually driven the last nail in Uhuru Raila's split coffin. Do you agree?
Yes, I do fully agree with this matter. Jesse, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Kindly continue, sir.
Yes, I do agree with this matter. The BBI actually was given a death spell last week, and we thank God for that, because ideally this was not a process that went in accordance with the law. And it's good that the Court of Appeal went ahead and actually put forward this case. On my part, that this brought a division between the president and his deputy. I think it was evident, because there are numerous times when the deputy president put it across that it's important that we bring Kenyans together, hear a multi-section of views from people before you go ahead and push a constitutional change. You must involve the people. And while the deputy was busy speaking about this, the president and his team felt process. And I think this is where the biggest rift was seen with the public on this particular matter. But to just go back to that you were talking about earlier, the truth of the matter is that I was in Taveta just yesterday when we were with the deputy president about to warn a sitting MCA. And just on the morning of, you find that everything was put aside and taken down just because it was heard that the deputy president was coming to bury an MCA. These are things that we have not seen since the era of the President Moi back then. I don't understand how in a democratic space, and a space whereby the president was very clear in his mind that he is trying to bring people together, that's why he came about with BBI and the handshake. And then when somebody who's trying to make a bid for the presidency wants to come meet his people, mourn with families, instead they choose to take down this thing, just because one in and it's this kind of actions that actually show that what we are seeing right now is not anything being done with any goodwill to the Kenyan people. There are no Kenyan people at the back of the mind of the president or the actors that are working on his behalf. There is a sinister agenda just to stop one man from ascending to the presidency. And it's this kind of thing that I think is not endearing anyone to the good books of the presidency, or even start and blame it on somebody has a different view from the government agenda. Let's be honest with each other. The 11 months to the election, with the election come 2022, this is the time to do it. For me, the biggest thing that I've been asking of the president is that he has a few months to go. He promised Kenyans a Big Four agenda. We are yet to see that much of it being implemented. For me, my biggest advice would be, why don't we just focus on delivering for Kenyans on the Big Four? Reshuffle the cabinet, get politicians out of the cabinet, move with your agenda, and make sure within the 11 months, Kenyans, by the time you're leaving office on the 9th of August, they can be sure that you actually put some efforts towards winning that particular election, winning their hearts ahead of that election. But instead, to choose to politic this late in an administration, I think it's something that we have not seen. Even Obama, when he knew Trump was about to come into office, he did not do much about it. He was busy saying, I have a preferred candidate, I'd rather let the party decide on how they're going to build that candidate, while I focus on the thing. When I look at this anything else except Mali and a political agenda to the president had done before, and also the good work the deputy had done before.
All right, Mwakesi, we seem to have a little bit of challenge with your connection, but it is understandable since you were just in Taita Taveta yesterday. But your point is definitely across. I was about to put you to task to explain whether you think the DP was over-ambitious since he's the principal assistant to the president. But allow us to take a short break. We'll be back with this matters, including our breakdown of the president's interview with top editors from various media houses. He spoke on the BBI ruling.